I've been saying the same thing for the longest time. The claim that gender is purely socially constructed, but then why resort to home runs and mutilation, which directly contradicts their assertion? Maybe.
Did he just say?
Here we go.
Did he just call hormones home runs?
Oh, I don't know. I'm curious as to what his answer to this
Their
question.
gender is purely socially constructed, but then there are characteristics pertaining to sex they also want to change because there's a relationship between gender and perceived sex. Yes, this is a
perceived sex. What the fuck is that? Did you just hear that?
I did hear that.
And that's a really confusing thing to say, isn't it? It's almost like he's saying that they could be incorrect in their perception of their sex.
Right. Right. You're right. That's a really good. I'm glad you fixated on that. That's a pretty big weasel word right there.
What the fuck is that?
Right.
That's a huge weasel word.
That's a giant weasel word.
After this whole video, the whole time he's saying, no one's questioning that biological sex is real. He throws that whopper out. Sitch, how the fuck do you like that one?
Let's hear that again.
Pertaining to sex, they contradicts their assertion. Maybe their gender is purely socially constructed, but then there are characteristics pertaining to sex they also want to change because there's a relationship between gender and perceived sex.
There you go.
Oh my God. God, I would love to ask him what he means by that.
Let me be fair here. Let me do what
you mean.
Vaush will never do.
Who's perceiving is the question, right? That's
I think he means other people's perceptions, not individual, not self-perception.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. However, he does say gender is purely socially constructed, which I assume he means by that is that there's no biological basis in gender, which I thought earlier in the video he claimed no one had that argument.
Yeah, people definitely have that argument.
So now he has the argument that he's saying people don't have.
Right. Unless the point of perception is other people and not personal.
Right. Well, but also his framework is fucking wrong and stupid and goes completely against all the science. Okay. Because listen closely to what he said. Let me go back one more time. His conception of gender dysphoria is completely fucking wrong and guided by ideology and not facts.
Socially constructed, but then why resort to home runs and mutilation, which directly contradicts their assertion? Maybe their gender.
Did he say home runs? I think he did.
Yeah. Whatever. That's not important.
Is purely socially constructed, but then there are characteristics pertaining to sex they also want to change because there's a relationship between gender and perceived sex.
Okay.
Maybe
so what he's saying.
Just go a little more because maybe he irons that out. Maybe we can tell.
Yes, this is a verified channel, Distant Kingdom.
No.
Okay, he does.
He's okay.
All right.
So what he's saying, is that he's saying that the reason people with gender dysphoria want to have surgery and have, and take hormones to develop secondary sex characteristics. The reason they do want that, even though gender is purely socially constructed, is only because society maps onto sex characteristics people's gender. So the argument that Vaush is making is that if we lived in a society where people didn't map gender onto sex characteristics, people with gender dysphoria would not seek out physical treatments like surgeries and hormone replacement. That's the implication of his fucking statement.
Do
you understand?
Yeah, I completely understand, but I struggle to see how that society would even be functional.
First of all, not only will that society not be functional, but this is the problem with having an ideology and then sort of ass backward post hocking trying to force something to coalesce with your ideology's answers. That's not how gender dysphoria works. Okay. That's not at all how gender dysphoria. If you raised a bunch of magic children in a land where they didn't have a concept of associating gender with sex, which I don't think is even fucking possible.
No, it's never existed.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's never existed, and it's not even possible because gender and sex doesn't map that way. They're not two separate things.
Right.
Even though he's claiming they are, even though he criticized Ben Shapiro saying no one's saying that they're completely separate, which he's now fucking saying they are. Okay. Even if you could hypothetically create this magical society that couldn't exist somehow, the person with gender dysphoria would still want to get the surgeries because they feel like they're the wrong sex.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, in this society, though, wouldn't I so struggle to even conceptualize this society, because he's saying in this society you could be like a fit woman, presenting as a woman, have all the attributes of a woman, but you have an inner feeling of being a man and tell everyone that you're a man. That doesn't change the way people are gonna see you as a fit woman and want to reproduce with you as a fit woman, not as a man.
Well, but he's not obviously not looking at this in any sort of evolutionary framework whatsoever.
Right.
Okay.
No, I understand that, but sure. That's why I question, how would a society like that even function? Because you would literally have to rewire your entire brain to not pick up sex characteristics, which the whole brain is optimized to pick up sex characteristics.
Right. No, yeah, that's completely right. But what I'm getting at is that he fundamentally doesn't understand that people's feelings of gender dysphoria are internal.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Even if, like, I guess a better example would be, hypothetically, if someone was born on an island alone and they had gender dysphoria, they would still have gender dysphoria, even if they'd never met another human being in their entire life. Now, they wouldn't understand their feeling, but they would still have it. They would still have a sense of wrongness about their body. This is not something that is taught to people. It's not a social thing. And this is where Vaush completely doesn't fucking, because he's so stuck on this nonsense about gender being a pure social construct, even though he claimed, I thought earlier, that wasn't the case. And in other videos, he claimed that wasn't the case.
Would this be like phantom body parts? Is that what they would experience?
I don't know what they would experience, but they would still experience the dysphoria. They experience something feels wrong. They just wouldn't be able to map on what exactly. They wouldn't understand why they felt that way, because if they never seen another human, they would just say, I don't know, something about me is bothering me, and I don't know why it is.
It's just so strange, because whenever you're diagnosing anything that's like a medical condition, the first thing they ask is like, what's your pain level? Where is the pain? Like, and every single medical condition has a certain, like symptom characteristic pattern that what is the symptom characteristic pattern for gender dysphoria aside from, I just don't feel right?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to. That's part of the problem with identifying it. It's very hard to get to the bottom of. Of the sense of the feeling.
I understand people, and I myself have had depression. I understand the idea that I just don't feel like satisfied or happy, or however you want to define depression. Depression is sort of an undefinable something is wrong with me type thing. And the thing that scares me is it sounds like gender dysphoria has the symptom characteristic pattern of depression.
I guess the way for you to conceptualize it would be if you had a persistent, unceasing depression about that was stemming from your body, and specifically your sex.
Right, but okay, I struggle because I feel like there are other.
Well, of course, it's something that you kind of you'd have to experience to fully understand. So obviously, that's why we struggle at understanding it.
Well, but I also feel like there are other situations where people feel. I guess the difference is with gender dysphoria, it's not tangible. I was thinking like the Elephant Man probably gets pretty depressed about how people are perceiving him.
Yeah, it's not tangible, but as science progresses,
You know, if I
Well,
was the elephant man, I
they'll
would
do the
think,
brain scans and they'll say, "Hey, look, you have your gender dysphoria according to your brain scan or whatever."
right. Yeah.
But no, I understand what you mean.
I guess
well,
part
this
of the problem is you're in a fully functional body that you feel is not functional.
right. But see, this is the key. This is why gender dysphoria is a mental illness and like being gay is not. Because with gender dysphoria, you have an internal problem, and no matter what society does, you're always going to have this internal problem.
Right. Yes.
And this is what Vaush fundamentally doesn't understand.
Yes.
And he's ascribing to this utopian ideology that if we lived in the perfect utopian society, people with gender dysphoria would not have to do anything, or they wouldn't even have gender dysphoria. They would just simply exist as magical, non-binary Zers, and no one would bat an eye, and they wouldn't have gender dysphoria. That's what he thinks gender dysphoria is. He has a fundamental misunderstanding of gender dysphoria.